Yeah.
Would you like to just bring me up to date then, the way things have been in the past few weeks since you initially?
Yeah, past few months, it feels I kind of lost track of time.
Mm.
Like this is part of it, I guess. Like the whole time concept has it's all mixed up, and my memory is a mess. So, so what happened leading up to that kind of that moment was
Mm.
there has been an unfoldment of several shifts. It feels like that, like things were taken from me. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly I lost all sense of meaning. Like there
Yes.
was no cause, no effect, nothing had a purpose anymore. There was no, that was all mental concept. Like this was one of those shifts
Mm.
that was very disturbing at that time. Like I cried for 3 days. Like what now? Like nothing is everything. There's no why. There's no because. That was just gone. And there was also other shifts that were like like for instance the identification with being a woman. That
Mm.
was a big one. Like that was gone all of a sudden. And I was really working towards this. I just wanted truth. I was searching for truth. Like I knew I wasn't seeing things as they really were since I was a kid. So I was just like all my personal will was like condensed
Mm.
into I want self-realization, I want enlightenment. That's it. That I didn't know what it was even. I just knew like that's where I need to go. And then what happened was I remember I was in the bed watching I watched two of your videos. Like the first one was with John,
Mm.
and he was comparing the mental activity with a tennis game.
Yes.
Perfect analogy. It really worked for me. And then I watched your conversation with Sarah.
Mm.
Yeah, that was a lovely conversation. And what happened was at a certain point, you told her, um, withdraw your energy from the dualistic realm.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, let's try that. It was brilliant. And I feel that gave me that push that
Yes.
I needed to just push me off that cliff. And what happened was right at that instant that I was like, okay, let's try that. Um, I'm, I don't know, like all separateness disappeared. And I became like one with the screen, or there was no me becoming one with the
Mm.
screen, but there was just the screen, me, the seeing of the screen. Everything was just
One
one,
thing. Yes.
and it was so visual. So like
Mm.
it, the whole visual field collapsed, and I was like, but this it. It's so easy. It's so simple. Like,
Mm.
and it wasn't even. Um, I was expecting the experience of oneness to be some firework,
Mm.
godlike,
Mm.
magnificent, but it was very simple. There was
Mm.
just seeing that it wasn't even oneness. There was more like, oh, there's just no separateness. There's no difference.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and then so that happened, and then I closed my eyes and I was still listening, and then there was just a hurt. There was just a hurt. There was uh, and it kept on going, and the whole realization was so perceptual for me because I remember the next day I woke up, I had to take the car, I was driving, but nothing was moving. I was completely still, and it was so weird. And I was like, and someone was doing the driving, but I was like, I don't know, like it's so strange. And I'm still, I'm not moving. And I saw the visual field had nothing to do with my eyes. There was just a perception of visual field. But I was not seeing. And and that this kept on going. I remember I read a lot of scriptures that really was something I was really drawn to, like ancient scriptures like the Upanishads. And at that time I was reading the Ashtavakra Gita and Dogen's Ujjayi time being. That really drew me in. And I remember that day I was reading that again, and there was no difference anymore. Also, that became one, the knower and the known. There was such a transmission, and this kept on going, like the whole visual field. Even when I was walking, I was watching my feet and I was like, I don't know, like I'm not moving and something is happening, but it was just like the first weeks I felt like I was on mushrooms. It was so psychedelic. Like it was so weird. And also what happened also, like all the perceptual filters kind of dropped one by one, like the ability to localize. Like suddenly the wall could be here, or it would become like two-dimensional. Also the perception of my body, like the sensation of my foot would appear like here, or like, and that was like, oh yeah, the body is also just a concept, like it's an idea. Like it's a bunch of sensations, and so that was, it has been really perceptual for me, and it still is. And the whole everything is becoming, it has, especially in the beginning, it felt so dreamlike. Like it's a dream, it's a video game. I remember also like that night I was watching myself in the mirror and I was like, oh, there's a body there, like
Yes.
it's an avatar. It's not. And the process is ongoing, because also what I noticed, like there were doubts, like, is this it? Like, is this awakening? Is this, is this what they call can show or self-realization? But the thing is, that the seeking dropped. It was gone.
Great.
That seeking, that, because that was so strong and so present throughout my life, and then suddenly that was no longer there. And even the need to ask questions about it was like, no, this is an unfoldment. I need to go within and let it unfold. And in the beginning, there was still a lot of intention and personal will involved. And now I feel it's more of an unfoldment, like get my hands off it, like just,
Yes.
right? Like
That's
let it
great
be
that it's,
done.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can relate to that.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, all the conditioning we've had is about effort and
Yeah.
activity, but actually realization is clearest when we're inactive and when there is just effortlessness. So it's great you see.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think for me, going towards that, there was a lot of personal will involved, which was great. That intention, that one-pointedness, and
Yes.
asking the self-inquiry, that really helped, I think.
Yes.
But now more and more, there's a slow relaxation into, oh, I should get out of the way, like let it be done, like let it all be done, because that sense of control is seen through, like who is doing anything, like there's no one. I can't see myself as a person anymore, an
No.
identity, or yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great, and I really wanted to thank you in person and show my appreciation for what you're doing. And that sense of transmission that I found with you, and also with other people that are teaching or exchanging. That sense of transmission is so strong. It's very palpable.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's quite simple in a way. It's just that
yeah,
that sense of a transmission is available to everyone, really. It's only that the screen or the filter of the subject-object mode is usually present. But when
yeah,
that is no longer there, there is just unity consciousness. And so it's a single field. So
yeah.
it's different because it seems like a transmission, but it's just the seeing of unity, really.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a nice way to phrase it. Yeah, you're right. It feels like a transition, but it isn't. It's a
Mm.
remembrance. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a beingness.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And even now, like when I'm looking at you on the screen, like I can't see a difference between you and me. Like it's so visual for me, like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It is. It's simply the forms appearing within the field, really, and
Yeah.
it is that easy, and it's always been there. So that's why it's in some way we question it initially because we recognize that it isn't actually different. It's just that the filter of duality has been removed. So we're just seeing it without that filter.
Right. It's true. And what you just said about I think it's because I can really recall from early childhood that it wasn't like this. I remember I was born
Ah,
in an enlightened state, and for the first few years there was no identity. There was just life. And
fantastic.
yeah, I can really recall that very clearly, like how
Mm.
strange it was, and the density of the dualistic realm, and how heavy it felt, and
Yes.
how unreal it
Mm.
felt. Like this is not real. Why are you taking this all so serious? This is not how it's
Mm.
supposed to be. And the reality was very fluid for me. Like it wasn't solid. It was very fluid, very oceanic in a way. And that has come back, this feeling. Like it's not
Mm.
um it's quite seamless.
Mm.
Like that whole dualistic modality is learned. It was taught.
Mm.
Like it's
Yes.
conditioned. That's
Yes.
not how we were born.
No.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And how's it been energetically? Because sometimes following realization, there can be a few invitations to try to draw
Oh
us
yeah.
into the dualistic realm.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's actually something that I wrote down. I wrote a few questions down for you
Mm.
along the past months that yeah, the invitations. What did I write down about it? Yeah, um, like because in the past there has been a lot of childhood trauma that came back, and I had a diagnosis also of PTSD, and
Mm.
so that fear state and the nervous system contracting is
Mm.
something I is very familiar. Um, and that has come back several times, especially with certain triggers
Mm.
that, like you have explained before, like everyone has their own themes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that has come back, which resulted in very intense emotional, yeah, like fear-based,
Hmm.
like mostly. anger also, but also mostly fear.
Mm.
Yeah, and in a way, it's, but the, how can I explain it? Like the relation to the suffering has changed also since that realization, because what happened now is, even though these emotional state arise, because what has been seen cannot go unseen. And that field of awareness, when it's there and when it's seen and it's felt and it's experienced, that it kind of dissolves by itself.
Mm.
Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Mm.
and it almost feels like, I like that you call it an invitation, because it feels almost like, I would say, a counterforce, or a sense of contrast, at least.
Yes. Yes.
And it still happens, and it did happen. Like, I have to say that the mind activity has really has suspended a lot,
Mm.
a lot.
Mm.
In the beginning, there were these attacks, almost like rumination, going crazy. That has subsided
Mm-hmm.
a lot, but yeah, these fear states do come back once in a while, and
Yes.
they're not as intense. They're not as they're seen through much more clearly, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't last as long.
Mm.
But yeah, they definitely, yeah, that.
Well, it's good. The way you describe it is actually seeing the invitations from your impersonal nature, because the clarity of your impersonal nature is very established. So even though the invitations come in, you're not actually taking delivery of them on a personal level, because that's the only way they become energized, really. Whereas
Yeah.
just resting as impersonal being, then they can come and go, and they don't have so much impact. And so, yeah, it's really good the way you're dealing with them, though.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had for you. Like, there, I feel there's a balance between it's 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 difficult to phrase it, but like bypassing something that really wants to be seen or felt, or because there has been, and I think for most of us in the collective, there's a tendency to suppress or avoid,
Mm.
right? And that is actually what makes these invitations more powerful.
Mm.
So um, like all these coping strategies that I used to have, that I wasn't even aware of, have also become visible. So
Good.
it's not like all of a sudden there's no uh, emotions or whatever, but it's really the seeing of it all, which can be quite intense at times. And
Mm.
there's like this searching, okay, what is the balance here? Like, when does an invitation become uh what is an invitation, and what is something that is authentically surfacing from the subconscious
Mm.
in order for disillusion, so it can resolve and dissolve. Like, I feel that's a delicate balance,
Yes.
because yeah,
Yeah, well, it's different for everyone, because for some people, where there's been a deeper investment in the personal realm, then there do appear to be things like subconscious programs. But
yeah,
if we're looking at everything from our impersonal nature, we realize that rather than there being any residue, it's just that there's a tendency for certain invitations to be taken delivery of. So it seems as though there's a continuity, but actually what you've seen is that your infinite impersonal nature has always been present. And then the personal mode is something we were conditioned into. For you, it sounds as
Yeah.
though it was quite a lot later, maybe. What sort of age would you say it was for you? Was it maybe 3 or 4?
That I was aware of this.
Well, yeah, you were saying that it
Yeah, I
beginning.
distinctly recall it because I think it started when I was 6, this identification, because there were two, I remember there were two things. One was language.
Mm,
When, yeah, you know, learning languages, of course, you learn languages earlier than that, but at a certain point, it becomes really solidified, like
mm,
especially when you have to enter into school, into
mm,
the school system, which was horrible for me.
mm.
So, and there was also because the home environment where I grew up in was very stressful and chaotic, and that set me into a survival mode, like fight and flight, that really triggered the nervous system
Yes,
into unsafety.
yes.
So these two things, and when I now look at the world also, like I didn't even realize to what extent this level of unsafety or the triggering the survival mechanism of the
Mm,
nervous system, to what extent that really influences our capacity
mm.
to see our true nature.
Yes.
Be- because when it's there, and I think most people are living in that state and are not even aware of it because it's so being kept on this edge of like, oh, barely enough or just
Mm.
not enough, you know, and most people are living there. So uh, yeah, I wonder how you see that. Uh,
Yes, because the dualistic realm is like an energy system, then
yeah,
it has an investment in keeping everyone on the edge, really, because that's the
right.
point at which there's most likelihood of taking delivery of the invitations.
Yeah,
But understanding it in that way as a kind of energy structure, it becomes easier to navigate. So the the clarity which comes with realization is that we can actually consciously remain as impersonal being, and then we can regulate the degree of investment in the personal realm, whereas everything in the dualistic realm is making it seem as though we're subject to the dualistic realm and that it has power over us and we have to comply. But gradually we see that we can regulate the energy we're investing in the dualistic realm, because the dualistic realm actually has no energy of its own. It's only through getting us to believe that it's controlling the situation and putting us into various forms of trauma that we're engaged with it. But gradually we can withdraw, and as we do that, then we actually can function more from impersonal being, which I refer to as sovereignty, because um,
yeah,
the dualistic realm is where it appears as though it's running the show. But when we withdraw to our infinite impersonal nature, then we realize that the energetic investment in the dualistic realm is something that we're regulating ourselves. And then it changes the nature of it, because with each of the invitations, um, we can we can just withdraw the investment from those particular experiences rather than feeling that there is some residue that we need to process, because it's just there isn't really any residue. I'm sure you've seen that there is actually only the clarity and purity and perfection of your infinite nature, which has never been affected by the dualistic realm. But
yeah.
it's just
Would you just to clarify, like that residue? Would you call that like this, like emotional suppression, for instance? Would you call that? Would that be what you would
well,
call?
there's a sequence really which most people aren't aware of, which is that when we venture into having the experience in the dualistic realm,
Mhm.
the sense of individuality appears. And as you say, it's actually installed mainly through language. So when we're being referred to as a person and the name is applied to the body mind, then there's a sense of identification which takes place.
Yeah.
And then the language we're encouraged to use includes words like I, me, or mine. So the truth is there actually is no separate personal being ever for anyone. There is really only the infinite impersonal being. But when we use words like I, me, or mine, it's very much like delivering lines in a play where we're creating this illusory character where it seems as though there is a separate being. And then the content relating to that character can then be embellished in a way by making it appear as though certain content, mental and emotional content, relates to that fake individual. But actually, because there is no separate individual anyway, then there actually is no content. So even the processing or the idea that we have to process or that there is any residue actually isn't true, because it's
Yeah.
a sequence of consent, firstly consenting to the idea, and it's a sort of tacit consent, which is a consent that we didn't realize we gave. And so we sort of consent to individuality. And then because the invitations are being delivered on the personal level, and the only way we can take delivery of them is on a personal level, then
Mhm.
we become familiar with taking delivery. So it seems as though there's this residue. So we can say things like, oh, I'm always depressed, or I'm always angry. Really, what we should be
Yeah.
saying is, I've been deceived into taking delivery of invitations into anger or fear or
Yeah.
depression.
Yeah.
And I haven't noticed that they're only being delivered as invitations. I thought that all that content was my own when it never was.
Yeah.
And that's really
Yeah.
liberating, because it cuts
Yeah.
short the whole process of the idea that we have to be processing anything on a personal level. But there is
Yeah.
a slight disclaimer there, which is that for when there's a really deep investment in the personal realm, it isn't really possible to just simply say, well, actually, you've just remained in your infinite impersonal nature, and there is no separate individual, and there's no content, because it's too far removed from the experience which they've spent a lifetime investing in.
Yeah.
But
And as you, sorry, please go
no,
on.
no, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Um, it's beautiful what you're sharing. It's such a beautiful perspective uh, to because for me that is new, and really to phrase it so eloquently, to say, oh, that whole idea of remnants or emotional suppression is also an invitation in itself. I didn't think of that yet. Like, oh right, yeah, it's and also, like you say, that whole identification, what has been taught, it has always felt so uncomfortable,
Mm.
so it's suffocating, it's
Yes.
claustrophobic, like it has never felt real to me.
Mm.
And I couldn't understand, like growing up where no one would wouldn't notice that, how unreal it was. Um, because it feels very constrictive, very constrictive. Like now the um, more and more, like I even feel like whatever I express now next week will be different, because there's such an acceleration now going on of I don't know, expansion, like um or inspansion. I don't know if that's a word, but there's like
Well,
uh
it's the withdrawal of the investment from the personal realm, really, because the
yeah,
conditioning we've had is to encourage us to invest in the dualistic realm. So to invest in personalization, to invest in the idea that we have these flawed emotions and these experiences which are unpleasant, but we're only ever maintaining them with our own energy. We're not told that, but that's actually the way it is.
So how do
So
you
when we
see, sorry, yeah.
no, so when we see actually that everyone really is just remaining as the infinite impersonal being, and the personal mode is just an option which we create through personalized language mainly, then
Mhm.
we realize that any content or any aspects of the character which are added beyond that simple sense of personalization, well, it's certainly optional, but it's something that we've been conditioned to invest in quite heavily. So really for you, what's happening is the withdrawal of the investment in the personal realm is giving rise to more energy being available in terms of alignment with your infinite nature. And so the experience changes because the personal realm is something which you're kind of regulating really. So only the aspect of the personal realm which you like to experience, so things like love or compassion or the higher experience is unity, then they all remain available. Personal love is still available, but the energetically depleting aspects are something that we just withdraw the investment from those, and that energy becomes available to us.
Yeah, it's kind of being done by itself. Like, and there's
Exactly.
just more joy. It feels like a causeless
Yes.
joy, like
Yes.
not an exuberant, very expressive kind of joy, but I call it the spring of life. It's really
Yes.
felt here.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that there are no emotions or things are always flawless, but it's changing so rapidly now. And I wanted to ask you, like, what is your perception of emotions right now? Like, what do you think it is, and how do you experience it?
Really, the manifestation of the dualistic realm, or in fact, the koshas in general. So you're familiar with the koshas, Maya.
Yeah,
So, so really, we all begin and remain as attributeless being, which is just an infinite field of, well, infinite potential, really. So the first filter is infinite bliss, which is it's actually an infinite impersonal field of bliss. So we're not experiencing it isn't a person who is experiencing it. We are
yeah,
that field, and
right.
we're the only experience available is bliss. And and then the next one, which is effortless being or the body of wisdom, is where all forms arise equally and effortlessly, but they're arising without any kind of mental or emotional content. So it's just the simplicity of the forms appearing in a very innocent way, the way you actually experience them up until the age of 6, probably. And then the mental realm is added, which is a dualistic realm. So there can be lots of contrast within the mental realm or the astral realm. But
Yeah.
then the next level to be installed is the etheric level, which is actually the emotional or energetic level. So initially, when the astral realm becomes available, it's just the sort of wonder of the experiences of the contrast, but without any kind of emotional content.
Mhm.
It's just the sort of purity of the contrast within the astral realm. But then the emotional level is a kind of supplementary level. It's a level which is related to the dualistic realm. So generally there are mental fluctuations and dualistic fluctuations. And when the etheric body becomes available, then those fluctuations are transformed into energetic fluctuations. So the highs and lows of the emotions relate to the highs and lows of the conceptual realm.
Mm-hmm.
And then we take delivery of the physical vehicle, and both the mental and the emotional level is impacting on the physical. So that's the
Yeah,
next.
that is true. Yeah, and I think before this realization, I did a lot of somatic practices too,
Mm,
and also that has changed because the whole idea of the body has changed. Like
yes.
that's also a concept. So, um, but yeah, I can really relate to that, and I wanted to ask you about, because throughout my life there have been a few instances that I would you could call that glimpses maybe.
Mhm.
Um, there was always this tendency to play with natural law. Like I never believed that, even as a kid. Like, what do you mean they're natural laws? Like, it felt so bendable to me.
Yes.
And one of that was time. Like, I was always interested in the concept of time, and I was like, no, you can play with this. Like, it's bendable. It's not solid. It's not
Yes.
rigid. Like,
Yes.
um, so I did that even as a kid, like,
Mhm.
and throughout my life there have been several instances that, well, I call it I was thrown out of time, and I was
Yeah.
like in a completely blank space,
Mhm.
which I called, this is pure potentiality.
Yes.
Pure potential, and it was completely blank. And back then I didn't know what it was, so it was very disorienting. When I got back from there, I was like, oh my God, I needed something to hold on to, because it was so, like
Mm.
everything dropped. But it was, now looking back at it, I can understand what happened. And
Yes. Well, really, the way you describe it is, um, and the way it is for most of us, until we see that there is that sequence, which is explained by the koshas, we don't realize that that sense of being out of time, which is actually effortless being,
mhm.
is something that we don't need to be concerned about. In fact, it's the most amazing place to
Yeah.
reside, and it's the one which is available to us as the foundation of all experience. And
Mhm.
it's where all creativity arises, and intuition, inspiration, all of the really great qualities arise from there. And then we have the option to actually move um, from lower to higher levels within effortless being, and then we can move towards the body of bliss, and bliss becomes accessible.
So when you say arise within the effortless being, like in the
Mm.
effortless, because for me, the effortless being is just this field. Like it's
Yes.
this, there's not really, like, how would you describe those levels then? Is that like the upper two koshas, you would say? Or
Well, yes, it's really so the first two koshas, the body of bliss and the body of wisdom or effortless being, they're infinite fields. So they're
yeah,
called bodies, but actually they're infinitely
yeah,
impersonal fields. So
right.
with effortless being, you could say that because it's unified, the lowest level available in effortless being is neutrality.
Yeah,
And that's how the general experience is. So where there's
yeah, true.
neutrality, there's just a feeling that everything is arising equally and effortlessly. There is no doer.
Mhm.
There's a sense of it just arising.
Mhm.
But then we see that actually within effortless being, there's potential for a sort of deepening experientially. So we can have experiences of unity consciousness. So in unity consciousness, there's firstly a sense of neutrality, a sense of seeing all the forms appearing equally and effortlessly. And then at a certain point, there's a recognition, well, actually, this is all the one being, which is what I am, which then can give rise to a sense of unity and intimacy and love, where you see everything as oneself. So that's a kind of more advanced level, or it's not really more advanced. It's actually very simple, but it's a different level to neutrality. So that we can go, say, from neutrality to unity to, you could call it universal love, because it's a different love. It isn't like personal love. Personal love is
No.
in the dualistic realm, whereas you could say impersonal love is is existing within unity, and the love is equal for all the forms appearing within oneself. So experiencing as an infinite field of beingness and awareness, every form is arising within that field or ocean as a wave, and it's a wave within the being we've always been. So that can give rise to a more kind of exalted experience, which can go through unity to love to, well, to bliss, actually.
Is that uh yeah, is that what you'd say, like Ramana Maharshi calls the self with the capital S, or God consciousness?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because that feels like that's the greater pool here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. That
And
feels
also,
like, yeah, sorry. Go
sorry,
on.
Maya, I love your name. It's
Nice. Yeah.
well, the dualistic realm is an inversion. So I think Maya is a great name for you, because it's
Yeah, it's
totally
a great
the
name.
opposite. It's totally the opposite of what is true for you, which is there's no illusion,
Yeah.
there's only truth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my last name is German and it means knowing. So it's like
Wow.
it's funny.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. Like yeah, and next to these invitations that were sometimes really intense, like I've heard that also from multiple people that you've spoken with, like, it can be quite intense.
Yes. Well,
There
the
has,
Jew,
yeah, sorry.
sorry, Maya, carry on.
No, 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 please. I love to listen to you. Like,
Well, I was just going to say that that because the dualistic realm is like an energy construct, and it
right.
wants everyone investing their energy in that without realizing that that's what they're doing. When we withdraw the investment, which is what happens naturally when we align with effortless being, the dualistic realm goes on alert, really, because it wants to invite us back into the dualistic realm and try to get us to reinvest, which is why the invitations back into the dualistic realm can be kind of heightened in a way following realization, because the dualistic realm recognizes that we've seen the clarity and simplicity of our true, infinite, ever-present nature. So it's looking for a bit of a sledgehammer to hit us with, to try to draw us back into the
Yeah,
dualistic
it's it's
realm.
it's like, oh, someone has just unplugged. Okay, let's get them
Yes,
back. Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Yeah. And that is because you say the dualistic realm as if that is you call it a construct, like, because it feels you, I think you also mentioned the demiurge, like
Yes,
from Gnosis, right? From,
yes.
yeah. So it does feel like there's a counter force, but I'm not sure like how to see that. Like, is there really something installed here? Because it doesn't seem like this was the initial, I don't know if this was the initial plan, this field of forgetfulness,
Hmm.
when we incarnate into this avatar, like this video game.
Yes.
I really wonder, was that the initial plan? Like, why do we have to pass through the forgetfulness and this veil of yeah, how do you see that? Like, is there an
Well, it can be seen in different ways, really.
yeah,
My feeling is that ultimately it is only a form of cosmic entertainment, because we, as the infinite being, you know,
yeah,
we're very familiar with bliss and unity and all of those experiences for eons, for eternity. So a little contrast, is something which we can welcome sometimes. And you can see it in that way, because the intelligence which is administering the dualistic realm is actually the intelligence of the infinite being anyway. There is really only one source of intelligence. It's just that the intelligence which is arising within unity, in the first two koshas, is a combination of infinite intelligence with infinite love. But the intelligence administering the dualistic realm is very much like a computer game. So it's intelligence without love, which is why it seems quite harsh, and also why the emotions, the higher emotions like love or compassion or unity or forgiveness, those kind of things have no value really in the dualistic realm. Or at least the dualistic realm can't utilize the energy of those, because that's the unified kind of energy. It can only it can utilize the lower frequency things, which are existing in a sense of duality. So things like fear or anxiety or blame or any of those. But
Yeah,
ultimately,
but
it is my feeling is ultimately it is a form of entertainment, and I think also there's something which we're
it's kind of
taking.
a masochistic, I don't know, like entertainment to me. I mean, oh my God, all that suffering.
Yeah, it is, but in a way, it never really
Yeah,
happened. But
it's true. That's also, and I mean, you cannot believe, I mean, the suffering this being has been through, like it was extreme,
mm,
and for years, like, and now I can still feel it in the body.
mm,
Sometimes, really, when it's being triggered, I can feel it, but in a way it has lost its credibility. Like
yes,
it's a story, and also that it's what has been happening recently is the whole like past, that there's no more, I have an inability now to really look at the past, because my focus has changed completely into present, but also future, I must say, because
yes,
it's like, yeah, very interesting. It's a
yes,
natural movement almost of the
yes,
being that is going towards something different, because the
yes,
whole dualistic realm is focused on the past, and there's a constant repetition,
yes,
which allows also for this endless loop of manifestation, of course, because we're
mm,
repeating of what we think is past by clinging to it.
mm,
um, and that is dropping
mm,
naturally.
yes. But the potential, which is arising effortlessly, which in a way there isn't really speculation. It's more just kind of noticing and seeing what's appearing. But as we
Yeah.
withdraw the investment from the dualistic realm, and there is more alignment with unity, and also you could say within the story of the experience we're having, as more people are aligning with unity, then that pool becomes deeper. So the opportunity to experience unity more deeply is also becoming available.
And
So
it's
it,
like inevitable, because I
yes,
really feel, um, how can I phrase it? Like I'm living my future's past. Like it has already happened. Otherwise, this pool couldn't even be there. Like it's simultaneously, like I have no doubt. Like there's no doubt. Like, oh yeah, this is it. Like this is it has, like it has already happened, but it's like I'm living
yes,
the past now in order to, I don't know, it's not it's like the cosmic joke. Like
mm,
it's,
yes,
like it's laughable in a way, because
yes,
that highest potential is already there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's and it's something which is just unfolding really, and we have the privilege of just witnessing that.
That's a perfect way to put it. We are just privileged to witness it. That's it. That's it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Mm.
And because you mentioned love, that is also a concept that has changed, because the whole concept of love
Mm.
from the dualistic realm, like when there is no longer this sense of doership, personal doership, the whole
Mm.
concept that has really changed my perception of love.
Yes.
I assume you can relate also, like what love really is, and what it mostly what it is not.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, love in the dualistic realm is actually in support of the energy system, because love on a personal level is so fleeting, and also the possibility of finding true love really in the dualistic realm is well, it's impossible really.
yeah.
So there's a chasing of all these dreams, but the reason it's like that in
Right.
one way is because our infinite nature won't allow us to settle for something which is less than our infinite potential. So
Yeah,
um but it's yeah, it can be quite captivating for a while, but it's a realism does emerge.
yeah. It is. It's like you say. It's this becoming sovereign.
Mm.
It's like it feels like becoming energetically autonomous. Like
Yes.
there's no dependency
Mm.
of an external, and when it comes to love, that is an external person most of all.
Yes.
Like, right,
Yes.
um, that is not the source of love anymore.
No, no,
Yeah, yeah, or for anything for that matter. Like there's no external source whatsoever.
no.
Um, yeah, or needing anything.
Mm.
Um, it's very interesting. Yeah, and it's almost hard now to think back as to how things were, or what stories have been played out in the past, or what roles, or
Yes.
like uh, uh,
Mm.
everything is such a role. Like, yeah, even the ones that seemingly hurt us or do us wrong or whatever, like it's so clearly that it's all this play.
Mm. Mm.
I wanted to ask you about another that kind of ties in with what we were speaking about earlier about emotion, because like a few years ago there was also this occurring that lasted like a few days, I think 3 days, 4 days at most. And it was a very, I never figured it out what it was, but like I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a bluish light in the room,
Mm.
and my hands started moving and I started speaking a strange language. And that lasted for a while. I couldn't stop it. Like I was feel
Mm.
like, okay, stop it. Like you're crazy, stop it. But I couldn't. And after that, I spent several days in a state of, I would say it was a very, very high intelligence. Like
Mm.
there were no emotions.
Mm.
Um, there was, because there were no emotions, there was also no judgment. There was also no meaning to anything. Like it doesn't matter. It didn't matter if it was a plastic cup or my own hand. Like it had the same value. And there was such it. I wouldn't call it blissful, but it was just very calm and peaceful and
Mm.
serene.
Yes.
And it didn't feel like a me. Also, it was not me. It was not. personal at all. There was just this very, very high intelligence coming through. And that really showed me like, oh, this is such a different way of being. It ended like it ended very abruptly
Mhm.
after an intense invitation that I fell for. But yeah, but it kind of stayed with me always. Like, that
You can
was
always refer to it and kind of remember.
right,
Yeah.
right, and that because there were so many of these examples throughout my life that had nothing to do with my beyond my control, right? It was like grace touching you, like,
Yes.
oh, let's pick you up and put you there. Like,
Yes.
see what's there over at the other side. Like,
Yes. Well,
it,
really,
it
what's happening is the ability to experience everything in a conscious way. So,
yeah,
what you describe actually, because each of the koshas, they're structured in terms of frequencies. So they all have, well, actually, this doesn't apply so much really to the body of bliss, although there are different degrees of bliss. But with the other four, they're structured in rainbow colors. So the rainbow colors actually relate to the chakras as well. So the lowest one is red, and so it goes red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So they exist in the body of wisdom, effortless being, in the mental or astral realm, in the etheric realm, or emotional realm, and in the physical realm. So what you experienced was the blue level within the
mm,
body of wisdom, which is where there is that heightened intelligence, because everything is contained within oneself. So everyone remains as attributeless being. But when we're utilizing the filters of the koshas, then we can experience on these different levels. So for instance, the red zone in the in the mental body would be things like thoughts of hatred, the most extreme forms of duality. In the emotional body would be fear. In so in effortless being, you could say that the lowest one, the red zone, is actually neutrality. But then the ability to experience is something which is ascending, so we can experience them consciously. So for whatever reason, the ability opened up. It's because there is a memory of that in some way,
yeah, it
and there
felt like
is
home. For me, it
a
felt like
kind
home. Like, this is
exactly.
who I
Yeah.
am. Yeah,
Well, because
there's,
we're all actually it's paradoxical in that we're all attributeless, but we're also in the sense of form, we're multidimensional. So the
absolutely.
opportunity to experience in all of those different realms is available to us. And what's
Mm,
returning, I would say, is the ability to actually consciously move between them. People say, oh, it just happened by grace. Well, I think that's
yeah,
true really when there isn't the clarity of consciousness. Things can just come up from nowhere.
yeah.
But as we understand the way things are structured, then we gain the ability to be able to experience those in a conscious way. So, for instance, the more we align with effortless being, with the body of wisdom, then the more ability there is to open up to those different realms and to be able to access them consciously.
That is really what now calls to my highest excitement to explore that.
Great.
Like, yeah, it's great. Like, I'm like, uh, let's go beyond and
Mm.
see. Um, Constantly feeling into where limitations are still being held, and
Yes.
going into that boundlessness of, because I've I've had several of these instances, and I still do, like, experiencing another reality, or you know, that is
Yeah.
such a natural thing
Mm.
for me to experience. Like um and it can happen also in dreams, by the way, like in
Yeah.
dream states.
Mm.
Yeah, can you recognize that?
Yes.
Like in dream states, there um and also making use of the slumber state, like when
Yes.
you just wake up or just before you go to bed. Like I'm
Yes.
really playing with that. Like I let my
Yes.
body fall asleep, but my awareness stays awake and it can travel.
Yes.
um and it's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's actually a junction point between
yeah,
each of the states of consciousness, and as we become familiar with that, we can at will utilize that. So we can, well, just the way you describe it, really.
it's beautiful. I love that. A junction point, that is the perfect way to describe it. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I called it a 0 point.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
because
that's
like
actually that's probably even more accurate, really, because it's we have to return to a attributeless being, which is the
yeah,
0 point or the junction
because
point.
yeah, it's one of the questions I wrote down for you as well. Because when I was growing up, as I said, there was a lot of I wouldn't say magic, but because magic is only being called magic seen from the dualistic realm. It's
Yes.
not magic actually, it's
No.
just
Natural.
possibilities. And
Yes.
um but there was like a natural knowing of cities.
Hmm.
Like I knew like how to become invisible. I knew how to control certain bodily functions. I knew all this. And
Yes.
of course I couldn't talk about this with other people. But and sometimes I did, and they were like, "Oh, okay, this is crazy." Um, but there is such like I really would wonder what's your view on that? Like because there's so much dormant
Mm.
abilities, I
Yes.
feel, that can be
Definitely.
activated or can
Yes.
be allowed.
Yes. Well, really, all of those abilities were available and fully known, well, including the knowing of your true infinite nature prior to entering into this experience. So
Hmm.
it isn't that these experiences are new to you. They're all known, and all of those different realms are already known. As you mentioned, the
Right.
the the blue realm is something you were familiar with. It's you say it felt like home because you know exactly what it
Yeah.
is. Um, but it eventually it all feels like home because you realize that we're familiar with all of it. It's only
Yeah.
that we've played this little game of limitation where we've turned off certain aspects,
Yeah.
really for the joy of just waking up to remember the potential which is there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's yeah, in that blue realm, it's interesting because it felt as truth, and I remember in all
Mm.
my seeking, which started at birth, was really there was a constant prayer for truth.
Mm.
Like I didn't pray for happiness or for there was always like truth. That
Mm.
was
Mm.
my highest prayer in a
Mm.
sense, like this invocation almost, like please show me what is
Yes.
real. So it's interesting that kind of ties in with me with the the blue robe. It was really blue also, so it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah, yeah,
Quite interesting the way with children, for instance, lots of experiences are available, and
yeah,
they just know they're completely natural. They don't question them, and they talk about them. And then adults sometimes put a lid on them. They question
yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah. they
So
sent
you're
me to
imagining.
the GP, because I had predictive dreams, and like.
Mm.
And I was also suffering because of that, because I thought I was responsible for that,
Yes.
right? Like as a child, because no one was there to explain to me what was being seen, and there were apparitions. So I was very open to the invisible realm always. And
Yes.
now it's changing, but back then, I mean, that was just, you know, what densities were before us. Like the density was immense. Like now I'm so excited to see how consciousness is opening up and so many young people are waking up. Like you see young people like 20 years old and they're fully awake. I mean, it's wonderful. But going back a few generations, like the people that have raised us, it was, it was very solid. Like there
Mm.
wasn't
Was.
this, yeah. I
There
really
wasn't even an
feel,
openness, was there? They couldn't,
no.
there wasn't even the ability to say, well, that sounds interesting. They always had to close it down, didn't they? Oh, no, that couldn't possibly be.
Yeah, no, you risk getting locked in a mental
Locked away.
institution,
Yeah.
like, yeah, locked away. Um, no, there wasn't that openness, like,
Mm.
and also probably again, um, this survival state was very prevalent, of
Mm.
course,
Mm.
like especially in Europe, like all the world wars, people were
Yes.
just barely surviving.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, if looking at the dualistic realm as a kind of inversion, being the opposite of what is true, you can see how survival is one of the key measures to create a sense of limitation, because when you're the infinite, indestructible being, survival actually isn't an issue, but
yeah, yeah.
and in fact, all the experiences available, the ones you're having, and in a way, the reason they're so easily available to children is because effortlessness is always the key. So
Mm.
um, when we're resting in our true infinite nature, resting as the infinite being, then everything is actually available there, because everything is effortless, because we're fully aligned, or it isn't even alignment really, but we are already the totality. So everything is available. So the easiest way to access anything really is to just allow it to arise effortlessly rather than have an intention, because that's just how it is.
Yeah, I love that in your book. I read that after that realization. I read your book, and you said also, and that really was helpful for me to constantly choose whatever is effortless to you,
Yes.
to never put yourself under any pressure.
Yes.
That was a very good guidance. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, it was helpful. And I have a question about what you just said. When talking about manifestation or conscious creation,
Mhm.
um, it's kind of the norm now that we say, like, it's your thoughts that
Mhm.
create, or your emotions or your thoughts that create your reality. But is it? I mean, it seems to me the infinite creator consciousness is not in the mental realm, right? It's I wonder, you're an expert on that. Like,
No, but
oh,
it's
yeah,
really where there's most fun is in aligning with our infinite nature, because when we surrender the sense of individuality,
yeah,
then there's no impediment to the flow which is coming from our infinite nature, and the intelligence which is coming from our infinite nature is infinite love with infinite intelligence. So it brings the most amazing potential in all aspects of experience. The idea of conscious manifestation is something which is definitely available, and the way it works most efficiently is in understanding the structures available within the mental and emotional realms. So when you know that the mental kosher and the etheric or emotional kosher, that they're actually structured in these frequency layers, then exactly what people say, which is that, it's the combination of the thought or the intention and the feeling which gives rise to the manifestation. So you could say that if the if the level of consciousness in the mental realm is on the highest level, which is on the violet level, and also the emotional level is on the violet level, which is the highest level of emotion, which is almost transcending emotion. So it's almost bliss, because bliss transcends emotion. So the most heightened level of emotion is still an emotion, but it's almost merging with bliss. And the clarity available in the mental realm on the violet level also is actually, it's so refined that it's close to unity. It's a very subtle form of duality. So the ability to utilize the mind or the emotions depends on developing the ability to function consciously from the higher frequencies, which is really what things like the law of attraction says. It says that the higher frequencies we can attain, the more possibility there is of manifestation. And the nice thing though is that they're both available, so we can still play in the dualistic realm, and we still can play in the game of individuality, but we can also experience in terms of our infinite nature. But generally, there's a process which takes place, I feel, which is that there's a kind of relinquishing of the mind and the emotions. People call it surrender, but it's really just so we see that the resource available in our infinite nature is just so way beyond anything in the dualistic realm that it's much more enjoyable, really, to align with our infinite nature, because the potential there is just beyond anything we could imagine with the mind.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's as you say, it seems magical, but actually it's normal. It's just available.
Yeah, it's and there's no attachment to outcome, which makes it really free.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And also, when we're maintaining neutrality, um, we can see events which are unfolding, and sometimes the mind could say, "Oh, this has gone wrong," but that's only
Yeah.
in the context of the mental realm. And quite often, if we just wait a little while and we see the way things are unfolding, we see that actually that is only one stage in the process, and there's something that's much deeper and more powerful, which is coming down the line.
Yeah, that is true. Like that's realization also, like everything is already perfect.
Mm, mm,
Even the mind can tell you there's reason to suffer or renounce it or reject it. But
mm, mm.
yeah, how do you see? I keep on hearing, like, whenever there was a question, like for things like difficult circumstances happening in my life, I heard like everything has already been written, which calmed me. Like, oh, it's like out of my hands, like it's already been written. Like, how do you see that? Like, it's like a predestination.
Mm. The human experience appears to be dualistic, so it seems as though there are good and bad things happening. But actually, when we see it in terms of unity, what we see is that there is an opportunity for expansion and development in a kind of worldly or dualistic sense, which most
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, that's when things are, working out well for me." And then
Yeah.
there's the sort of contracted version when we're put into various forms of mental and emotional limitation. and the commentary then would say, oh, it's all, everything's going wrong. But actually they're both opportunities. So the one is the opportunity to experience in the dualistic or the physical realm, and the other one is to align more deeply with our infinite nature and to withdraw the investment from the dualistic realm. And so we can consciously do that when we understand that we can function from effortless being. Then it's much easier to see things in a sort of broader context. So we're not sort of fluctuating between saying, oh, this is right or this is wrong. We're just saying, oh, well, this is interesting. I'll see where this is going to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so that's a way to experience human life in a more kind of unified way. But the way it works for everyone is that the either the sort of expansion or contraction, they both have value. So the expansion is usually an expansion in terms of worldly experiences, so like wealth or relationships or children or, you know, advancement in career, all those kind of things. But the progress available when that is stripped away is alignment with our infinite impersonal nature, because the personal realm is to do with content. So it's to do with our appearance, our houses, our cars, our jobs, and all of that. But our infinite impersonal nature has no content. So that's why when things are stripped away, then it becomes much easier to align with impersonal being. But when we understand the way the koshas are structured, we can utilize effortless being and function from impersonal being much more consciously. So we don't need to go through the extreme contrasts, because they only emerge really when we're over invested in the personal or the dualistic realm. It tends to be that it's kind of balancing which comes in. But if we're consciously aligning with impersonal being, and that's the priority really, and we're utilizing the personal realm more selectively, then experiences tend to be more harmonious.
Yeah. That is also seen here, like the ability to maintain conflict becomes, yeah, just more difficult in a way. Like
Mm,
it's so clear that whenever I go into a sense of, and it's not that I condone all behavior, or
mm.
there's still boundaries needed and
Yes. Mm,
choices being made to who I
yes.
want to engage with and whatnot. But
Mm,
um, when it's really seen that there's no real separateness, it becomes really difficult to do harm
mm.
or to maintain conflict, or
Yes.
yeah.
A lot of effort required.
Yeah, and even the efforting, like I had this incident this week, like that I was efforting to get something done, and I was like, it was exhausting. Like I can't maintain that kind
Mm,
of pattern anymore. Like it's so uh it's almost like it has become extra painful now,
mm.
because it's so
Yes.
clear that it's like
Yes.
counterproductive and
Yes.
very harmful for my own well-being.
Yes.
um
Well,
yeah.
that's your intuition in one way, because because you're familiar with functioning from Methodist being, then um, overinvestment in effort is something which it's guiding you in a way, because that sense of being overburdened, it's like a little alarm saying, are you sure you wish
Yeah,
to have this experience when you don't need to?
it's so true, because it just comes from conditioning. It's just habit playing out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So clear.
Mm.
Yeah. And would you say like effortless being, is that the same as what you would call the higher self, or the Atman, or the soul, or is that the
Well,
same to you?
Yeah, I think that when we're in a way using the term higher self can create a little bit of confusion because effortless being is our natural and really the most simple way of functioning in the realm of form.
Mhm.
So you could say it's certainly higher than the level of individuality, but it's um, the um, the idea of higher and lower is kind of grading, and I'm
Yes,
really in favor of any kind of hierarchy because in unity there is only equality. So um, so I prefer unified language rather than any kind of grading.
that's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. That reminds me, yeah, to use language consciously.
Mm.
Yeah. You stress that a lot in your videos, how to use language, and yeah, I find that really helpful. How would you say like um let me see how I can phrase the question. Like, do you feel there's an accumulation of awareness in the sense that well we tend to speak about past lives. I'm not sure if that is really past. It's simultaneous but
Yes.
parallel. Um, but there have been memories of other lifetimes
Mm.
or other bodies.
Yes.
Um, and I wonder how you see that because there seems to be, well, that's the illusion of linearity. Like there has been an accumulation into,
Mm.
I don't know, like certain gifts or talents or karma or whatever you want to call
Mm.
it. Like,
Mm.
how do you see that? Like, and I specifically, I'm interested in um, vasanas or samskaras.
Mhm.
These,
Mm.
yeah. Like, what's your view about that?
Well, if we begin from pristine, effortless, impersonal being,
Hmm.
then none of that content actually applies. You could say we're experiencing the equivalent of it's a sort of virtual reality construct or even like a movie in one way, because
Hmm.
there are certain aspects which are available, but because because everyone remains as the infinite being, wherever we put our attention, so there is only ever this timeless, pristine moment, which, there's no element of time, there's no element of content. It's just the simplicity of the potential existing right here and now. So all potential is available within that opportunity. So if we take things like the idea of past lives, because we're the infinite being, we can shine the light of our infinite potential into any kind of topic and we can activate it through the potential of our infinite nature, because our infinite nature is the ability to create anything. So if we're looking into past lives or we're looking at certain personalized content, wherever we look, we will find infinity because that's our nature. So even if it's in a relative sense, people are they're sort of actively involved in research of various forms. Some people research forms of literature or mathematics or something, and infinity is present everywhere. But we never find any ultimate solution in any of those because it's all in a relative sense. So as Ramana Maharshi says, the only thing which is ultimately true is the truth of our infinite impersonal nature. It's only the the potentiality, really. So it's a field of infinite potential. but there's nothing, there are no forms which are appearing, which you can say are ultimately true. They're all relative. So you could see past lives as something which, if we delve into them, you can find the most amazing things, and it all works in a very coherent way. Um, or we could see it as an aspect of the movie where we sort of look into these various realms and have that particular experience. And sometimes it can be a little distraction, but it's really just, they're just all forms of entertainment in one way. And so we can experience them to the degree, we wish to, which is either deeply, or we can just experience them in a kind of peripheral way. But that's the nature of
Yeah.
sovereignty, really, because in the same way
Yeah.
as we're able to either invest or withdraw our investment in the personal realm, we can either invest more heavily or withdraw investment from those sort of concepts of past lives or samskaras and that sort of content. Because
Yeah.
the fun begins really, it's when there's a kind of lucidity which comes into experience where we realize that we're making the whole thing up, and
Yeah.
we can have the experience on our terms because we're the sovereign infinite being. And that's true of everyone. Everyone is the infinite sovereign being. So everyone's own version is perfectly valid because everyone remains as the infinite being, but they're shining the light of their infinite potential through various filters and manifesting experiences on their own terms. And speaking of those as though they're the ultimate truth, when really they're the truth of their own, it's the truth of their own experience and perfectly valid, but there is no ultimate truth in any of it. It's just, it's like you can create any drama or any movie you wish to, and whichever elements you wish to include, you can include them.
Yeah. And that comes back also to what we talked about before about uh choosing an alternate reality or a different version of, yeah.
Yes. And quite a simple context really is to see the potential from our infinite nature always has a feeling of expansion. Anything where there's alignment with the dualistic realm creates a sense of contraction. So the
Yeah.
idea of things like karma or samskaras or limitations, they all have a feeling of contraction. So they're certainly available, but do we wish to go there? It's optional as to whether we do or not.
Yeah. And then I wonder, like, has there been a deliberate intention to create that in this lifetime in order to learn certain things or in order to gain expansion? Like, um,
Well, that really is like that's almost like the potential of a character in a movie. So
yeah,
it's
it's a
making that
script.
distinction, really. It is only a script ultimately. The
It's a
idea of
script.
learning and progressing is only happening within the drama. There is no ultimate, there is no ultimate learning or anything because it's just experienced within the drama. And if we change the theme of the movie, then all that learning means nothing anyway.
So true. It's so true. It's the mind that wants to add meaning to things. Like all that suffering has to be good for something like that, like that. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mm.
It can feel very real. This that tendency to attach meaning or
Mm.
to follow a story. It is
Yeah.
entertaining in a way. I mean,
In a way, it seems
yeah.
my feeling about the dualistic realm is it's almost like parents who love their children so much that they allow them to misbehave and do anything. And
Beautiful.
they think it's wonderful, but for everyone around them, it's quite irritating, really. And but
Yeah.
it seems as though the
Nice.
infinite being is just given a little bit too much potential in terms of experiencing the extreme. So that, you know, things like suffering and contrast, they're a bit too far off the scale, I feel, at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe not just at the moment, but they have been for quite a while, like a
Yeah.
few millennia.
Yes.
Uh, like we took a wrong turn somewhere and then we chose to, oh, we're here now, let's follow this road. Like it's
Yes.
obviously not working, but let's just keep going
Mm.
and not question it. Yeah, it's interesting. While I'm listening to you, I can hear the mind really saying, yeah, no, this story is really like, that's really true. You know, that can come up, these thoughts.
Yes. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, and that was also so clear. I remember um, during all that seeking, like I researched and explored so many modalities, which we would call healing modalities or spiritual modalities, or like, and in the end, every time I could see this is just another experience. This is not really it.
Mm.
There's something beyond this. I remember when I first saw Ramana Maharshi, like, okay, that's the beyond. That's what I want to
Mm.
go where he is. Like, um, and before that, there was just, oh no, this is just another identification. This is an experience, but it's still something very temporal.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And I'm still wondering, like what you said about who implemented this whole game of that suffering, those limitations. Yeah, there's no why, probably, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, it's just a field of infinite possibility, but um, you know, if you give children too much free rein, they sometimes become slightly self-destructive without realizing.
yeah. Because even in like, is there? Well, I think will comes from the personal. Like I said, like the experience now has been far more like, oh, it's all being done. Like I'm not
Mm.
doing anything, and I wonder. There was always this intention here to before that moment to really align. It's still here,
Mm.
to be honest, to really align my will with like God's will or
Mm.
the highest
Yes.
potential,
Yes.
the source, God, whatever you want to call it, infinite being.
Mm.
I don't even know if we could call that a will, but um, yeah, there is still this, because in a way, residing in this impersonal being, effortless being, as you call it, it's very peaceful. Like it's already so perfect. You don't want to do anything. You don't feel the need. I could sit on the couch all day, and it's
Mm.
okay. I'm okay. It's
Mm.
not necessarily unpleasant, or it's so I'm fine. It's
Mm.
like it doesn't need anything.
Mm.
And yet there's also still a desire to create or to explore or
Mm.
to enhance
Mm.
life's experiences.
Mm.
Like, would you say the individual, or no, that's also the infinite creator, like that's also source, right? That
Well, there are two options really. The one is, well, the condition mode is the idea that we engage the mind to come up with concepts which are the basis of activity.
yeah.
But the one which comes into play much more, where there's alignment with effortless being, is is really that activity is the motivation is coming really from things like intuition or
Mm,
inspiration, and it's just coming from nowhere really.
yeah.
So being available in that sense is where the higher forms of creativity and activity can be performed. Whereas if we're putting it through the filter of the mind, then the concepts are far more limited.
Yeah.
But the options remain available, so we can still play with the mind, but it becomes more interesting when we just well, with the basis of activity, as you say, effortless being, it doesn't really mean effortless doing, so it doesn't really mean sitting on the couch. That's a possibility, and as you say, it's quite self-contained.
Yes. Yeah, it's just more that it's not really sitting on the couch all day, but it's really that feeling like
Yeah.
everything is okay. Like it
Yes.
doesn't matter that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the way activity emerges really is it's coming from it's coming from effortlessness, and it's coming from an inner guidance, and it's coming from intuition. So there can be a sort of conscious aligning with one's infinite nature and being in service to one's infinite nature. So you could say that the dualistic realm is designed to make us all so that we're in service to individuality, when the best opportunity is to align with our infinite nature and just to consciously be in service to our infinite nature, which is really, we don't initiate anything, it's really just being available, because the infinite being brings the aspects where we where there's some potential, and so that happens in a much more balanced and delightful way to the way it does in the dualistic realm. So the dualistic realm, it's all about effort. So it's about, hard work, achieving things in time, focus, competition, persuasion, all of those aspects.
Mm.
Whereas activity from effortless being is something which just emerges. And it's being attentive to the things which come to us effortlessly. So if someone, it could just be a phone call, or it could be a meeting, or it could be a line in a book, or just it can just come from anywhere. But it's just that sense that it's being attentive to the things which come to us effortlessly, and that's, those opportunities are coming from our infinite nature. Whereas the things where it's being contrived on a conceptual level is still in the dualistic realm and will require hard work, effort, focus, and those kind of things.
Yeah, that's very clear.
Great.
Yeah, it's very clear. And it also feels like a delayed kind of way of to manifest. Like whatever is here now is already in the past. Like it's has
Yes.
been. There's your and the response to that, like is
Mm.
that's delay. That's not true manifestation. That's just responding or reacting to
Yes.
what has been created
Yes.
already.
Yes.
Um, it doesn't make sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
There is this, I think the question also arose for me as to what's next, like what's now, what now? Like,
Mm. Mm.
right? This has
Yes.
been, uh, that seeking has been there all my life, very
Mm.
intensely. And now it's like, this is it, right? It's,
Yes.
so there's this question also now sometimes like,
what next?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mm. Well, it's quite interesting, really, because you could say that seeking in a worldly sense, so you could say the dualistic realm is a realm really of things like, expression or demonstration. It isn't a particularly spiritual realm. It's more to do with content. For someone such as you, though, because the dualistic realm recognized that it wouldn't be able to hold your attention really by, presenting invitations into identification with form, or pursuit of material experiences. So it's said, well, I think with Maya, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to preoccupy her with spiritual seeking for a while just to keep her busy.
Yeah, that worked.
um,
Yeah.
But then when it comes to an end, it's really that there is then, well, there's only one possibility really, which is just to align with one's infinite nature. And rather than being in service to individuality, because even spiritual seeking is being in service to individuality, really, because it's maintaining the sense of I, the I who is seeking.
Yeah.
So when that sense of I is relinquished and there's just the seeing of the infinite I, the infinite being, then we can really only be in service to our infinite nature. And what you'll find is that the guidance in the way that will appear will just be effortless, and it will be really to do with um, your purpose in one sense, and it'll be revealed to you, but it'll be revealed in the most magical way.
Mhm.
And it'll be to do with probably communication. It'll be to do with um, well, actually, everything that you've experienced, all of the, I say this quite frequently, really, but it appears as though spiritual seeking is something that we're doing for the individual, but it's almost like being on a training course without realizing, because what you're accumulating is the ability to relate to pretty well anyone you ever meet, because you've done most things that people have been engaged in. So you can relate.
Yeah. That's what it felt like also. Like it feels like in it, like it's yeah, the training or the schooling
Mm,
of it. And it doesn't feel personal, like it's transcends the personal.
mm, mm,
There's also not a gain or a, you know, or a profit or
mm, mm.
yeah. There is a longing to share, like, you know, to serve.
Good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, that's really good.
Yeah.
How would you feel about our conversation being posted on my channel?
Yeah, sure, you can post it. It would be nice to do that because I'm quite shy, so that would be good for me.
Well, it's
Yeah.
quite interesting the way that happens quite often. I was speaking with a lady yesterday, and she was saying that her big reservation is in public speaking, that she has this
Yeah.
really nervous about public speaking. But I was saying, well, actually, the way the dualistic realm works is it's to do with inversion. So it's the areas where there's a kind of restriction or reservation, which is actually concealing or aimed to conceal our true potential. So it's because you have this potential in terms of communication that the dualistic realm doesn't want you to recognize that. So it keeps you very shy.
Huh. Nice. Yeah, and it's not necessarily shy, but I've always like worked kind of in the background. Like whenever I was invited to step into the front, there was always like, I
Wow.
like
Yeah.
I keep to like I will keep to the background. Yeah, it's maybe also safe.
Well, it's the
Yeah,
demi.
but in a way, it really doesn't matter. Also,
No.
like it doesn't matter. That's also the joke of it. Like
Yes.
when there was this realization, there was very often I just burst into laughter because like it doesn't matter.
No,
Yeah. Yeah. There was another question, if I may.
of
If
course,
there's
yeah.
yeah, yeah, okay. Um, about dreams.
Hmm.
How did you experience dreaming? Since there has been realization for you, like, is there like dreaming was such uh, an important part of this life. Like
Hmm.
as I said, like there was a lot of prophetic or predictive dreams, and very often I was shown things that I needed to know, and it still happens.
Hmm.
And also things that have happened since, like I told you, this emotional states, this
Hmm.
intense emotional, like I call it suppressions, or like um, that most often occurs in dreaming.
Hmm.
So things will surface in the dream, will
Yes,
play out like a screenplay,
yes.
um, often having to do with certain memories or fears.
Hmm.
The
Yes.
most predominant themes, and then even that was now seen through, like that's almost an invitation as well, because when I woke up, the first thing my mind does, like, let's explain this dream, let's see what it means.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't need to do that. It has, or it's gone,
Yes.
like I can just drop it.
Yes.
um
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Well, the dualistic realm wants us doing a sort of three pattern shift. So it's like it wants us to be investing energy in the waking state and the dreaming state. And so it can be that the invitations the invitations in dreams quite often are to do with more long-standing invitations. So there could be, there could be deeper fears where we can take delivery of them in the dream state, where we wouldn't take delivery of them in the waking state because there's more
Mhm.
consciousness in the waking state.
Mhm.
So it can work on that level, but the general trend is that they become more harmonious and
Mhm.
they're not really, the dreams aren't really that turbulent. They're more kind of just entertaining. They're quite rich in many ways, but
Yeah.
not there isn't really any fear. There aren't any bogeymen showing up in them or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it's not extreme nightmares at all, but just certain themes showing up in the
Yes.
dreams, like you said, exactly that.
Mm.
Um, it's just tricky,
Mm.
to not listen to these invitations sometimes, and it's nice to know that uh, they do tend to get more harmonious.
Yes,
But it feels like everything is getting more harmonious in it,
definitely. Yes.
right?
Mm.
Like how has been, because whoever I spoke to, this is quite how it went for most people. Like in the beginning, there will be very intense
Mm.
things coming up. It's not as intense anymore, but in the beginning, there was really strong restlessness or certain patterns
Mm.
playing out,
Yes.
trying to survive, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of those they tend to be the themes which can continue in the dream state a little bit because there's something which, well, as I said earlier, really the invitations, the more kind of dense invitations still have an ability to play out in the dream state where they wouldn't be able to play out in the waking state. So
Mm-hmm.
it's quite often things like survival issues or the idea of complexity or things not working out or and then you wake up
Right.
and realize, well, actually none of that's true. And but you may
Yeah.
remember back to childhood experiences where you were having those experiences in the waking state.
Yeah. But that's also tied in with uh, believing there is such a thing as memory. Like it's
Yes.
truly a retention of certain thoughts. Like, okay, this is
Mm.
my past. Like these are memories. So there's a
Yes.
retention of certain thoughts
Yes.
that kind of tie together into a story.
Mm.
Uh, and that's mine. It's yeah. How have you seen with the people you've spoken? I mean, you must speak with so many people, right? There's so many flavors, and
It's fascinating because there is no sense of authorship or intention really, because it's only I have no control over who contacts me, for a conversation. So until the video camera comes on, you don't know who you're going to be talking to at all, really.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
fascinating in that sense, but it's really inspiring to see the way realization is available for everyone. Like there are no prerequisites for realization. It's it's just universally available, and it's it's really been an amazing demonstration of the way effortless being orchestrate things, because there seems to be a progression in some ways in the way that it's developing, and
Mhm.
and then more people resonate, and there's a wider range of people available.
What
So
what would you say is the progression exactly? Like the amount of people waking up, or
yeah, well, it's
Mhm.
the amount of people and also the ease with which there can be realization. So um,
Yeah.
a few years ago, it seemed to be more of a battle for there to be realization, and for years I just was having one-to-one conversations and having lots of success, but it's quite an arduous, well, not arduous, but it's a limited process in some ways, but things that are happening now. So there are many more people realizing their true nature just from watching conversations on my YouTube channel than from having one-to-one conversations. So that's really welcome because it's just the potential. I'm receiving more. I'm receiving more emails from people each day, really, where they're just saying, "Oh, there are quite a few people who they make an appointment for conversation, and then a few days later they write to cancel it because they've already realized their true nature, which is fantastic."
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened with me. It was watching a conversation, and that was just a final push, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. It was really
Um,
good for you, Maya, because as you described, there were several kind of awakenings on the way. So there was a
yeah.
familiarity the way it was developing. And so when there was realization, the invitations which came in, they weren't powerful enough to draw you back into the dualistic realm. There was maybe a little bit of turbulence which you saw, but there was enough clarity to not get drawn back in. Um, with some people, there can be, and I feel this is only a stage, but with some people there can be clarity. So they're following the conversation and there's total clarity, and
Mhm.
they realize their nature. But then because the dualistic central server is observing everything from moment to moment, it's just waiting for the moment where there's a total clarity, and then it delivers the most devastating thought that it can come up with, which is, "Oh yeah, but you haven't got it, have you?"
Yeah. Yes.
Because there hasn't been the sort of clarity to realize that that's the way the dualistic central server delivers invitations into the mind. There's still an element of personalization where they think, "Oh, that's my thought. Oh, I haven't got it." They immediately adopt it as though it's theirs. Um,
Mhm.
but actually there is already realization. It's just that they believe that crazy thought that was delivered. But it's a joke, really, because it's just
Yeah. And for me, that has happened. Like, I believed crazy thoughts, but like the realization was so coming so strong.
Mm,
Um, that and it was so perceptual, as I said, like it was so the whole visual field collapsed
mm,
constantly. Like there was no way around it. It was
mm.
so clear.
Yeah.
It was constantly unfolding. The sensory organs were completely and still they are
Mm,
completely changing. Like
mm,
everything became fluid again. Like
mm.
as I remember as a child, and
Yes.
all these mind filters just dropped. So yeah, there was no way around it. Like that something just, like I said, like it, once it's truly seen, it cannot go unseen. You there's no going back anymore. And probably all those other instances like kind of prepared it for me. Like
Mm.
there was a lot of determination and dedication, like constant meditation. Like I used to meditate 5 hours per day.
Yes.
You know, like it was very, I
Commit.
didn't know, sorry,
Very committed.
super committed. Like I don't care if I lose everything and everyone, like that's where I'm going. I didn't even know where I was going, but it was such a commitment to that, the constant prayer of
Mm,
please show me the truth.
mm,
Um, Now it sounds odd to say that, like that's
mm,
a prayer, but I did use a lot of bhakti and prayer.
mm,
I was very much into that, like that state of surrender.
mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah, it was a nice, it's a nice journey. It's still a nice journey. Like, and there's no way of knowing. Like that's also the thing. Like it's really stepping into the unknown to a
Mm.
greater extent each day and each moment,
Yes.
like because constantly still unconscious beliefs or limiting beliefs are being shown. Oh right, there's greater freedom, there's greater freedom, there's every day there's greater freedom, and um this willingness to step into the unknown. And that has become also, like I was so focused on scriptures and learning, and there was a very strong intellectual pull
Mm.
always with me. Like I'm a big reader and I want to know everything, but there was, and now it's more like I don't know. I have no clue what's going to happen. Like even the conversation we have today and the insights that are now here, tomorrow can be
Completely different.
completely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like even today things can show up like, oh, I thought, oh, so that's also not true. Like,
Mm.
yeah. How long has it been for you now, David, that you've been on this? Yeah, since self-realization or since this unfolding for
Mm.
you?
Well, there was clarity in November 2005, so
Okay.
about 19 years.
And how is the unfolding of that now? Like, do you feel, because I don't feel, oh, there's self-realization and then the process stops. Like, and now it's just
No,
beginning. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, really,
Yeah.
I guess I was fortunate early on because there was some guidance out of the mental realm quite early on. So initially, there were a few thoughts coming up as to the way to go, but it
Mm.
became very clear that the mind wasn't the instrument to listen to. So that resulted in, well, not even a surrender, it was just a realization that the mind wasn't the right instrument. And then things just started to happen, and there was a noticing that all the best things just happen effortlessly and they just come to us without even trying. So the main responsibility we have is just to have the nicest possible life we can,
Yeah,
with no seeking. It was the end of
right.
the seeking, and it was just having the most delightful life experience. And then you find that the infinite being says, well, we'll probably utilize you to some degree. So, certain things come along. So it was just the beginning of conversations initially, and but nothing was initiated. It was all either by invitation or something which just emerged effortlessly, and it's been like that throughout. But it's definitely progressive and it's definitely accelerating. So it's quite exciting, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I can feel that sense of excitement and that sense of acceleration. I didn't expect that. Um, it's so funny, like you realize that I realized how much I expected actually only after. It's like looking back, like, oh, I thought I didn't expect anything, but there were a lot of expectations.
Yes.
And I remember, like, oh, this is so different than what I expected. Like,
It's so funny, really, in one way, because you're
yeah,
so committed to realization without even having a clue of as to what it is.
yeah. But there are projections, right?
Mm.
The mind projects certain
Yes,
ideal
yes,
ideals onto it, like how it should be, or what
yes,
it should be, or what it should not be,
yes.
um,
And
which is quite interesting.
that keeps the seeking game going, really.
Yeah, and it's so silly. It's so silly how this plays out. Like, oh, this can't be it because it should be different.
Yes.
Um,
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but the acceleration is felt, and also that sense of excitement is felt, and there's almost like this urge, like, oh, keep exploring. Just
mm,
but probably also, like you said, it has freed up a lot of energy.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.